Hey guys, how's it going? Eli here, back with another video where today we're going to be having a conversation about the overall current card prices for the EX Gold Star era, as well as some of the booster box prices for that era, and whether we think it is a good investment or just overall analyzing the current price analysis for the future of this era. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So, got to get out of the way as always. Weekly giveaways for basically ever, as far as we know. All you have to do to enter into our weekly giveaway is like, comment down below on any one of the 3 videos we post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then of course subscribe to the channel. We're going to be having 3 winners each and every week, 6 Fusion Strike booster packs given away to each winner, and then you can enter in multiple times since we have 3 videos. So yeah, exciting stuff as always. But now that I got that out of the way, we're going to jump right into it because we have a lot to talk about. And I know it was one of those things where I put down EX, Black and White, and Diamond and Pearl, but I'm actually going to have to break it into 3 videos because this specifically is an area I really want to touch very much so in depthly, and we'll kind of explain why. The 3 main reasons, and this is kind of going to be the topic. And we're going to look at 4 elements first. We're going to look at gold stars, delta species, we're going to look at EXs, and then we're going to look at the sealed product. But the 3 main things that I think are really important are just kind of taking a look at the value that is in the EX, the value that's in the delta species, and the value that's in the sealed. So kind of first thing we're going to take a look at, though, because we got to get everything in the basis, is we're going to take a look at, what exactly was the EX era / the Gold Star era. For those people that don't know, it was kind of like the transitioning era, more or less, into Emerald, Ruby, and Sapphire. That was kind of when you started to really see the EX cards. Nintendo was really now officially starting to take over from Wizards of the Coast era cards. Obviously, you had kind of your the last video that we talked about where we were really taking a look at Shining cards and prior, and then in between that you had your e-reader cards, and between that you had your Crystal Pokemon, and then you eventually finally got into this kind of generation. And this was a generation too that wasn't very popular with a lot of people, and we're going to actually see this in a lot of the cards, and it's going to be a very common trend and pattern, and this is where I think there's going to be a lot of actual investment opportunity in this kind of era. Not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but you'll kind of see as we kind of go along here. So first thing we're going to take a look at is just the Charizard. Of course, we got to get the Charizard out of the way, kind of take a look at it. One of the reasons why I think it is a very good one to look at and very interesting one to look at is mainly due to the fact of the matter that the card itself, first off, 94 PSA 10 population. All right, for a Charizard card, that is very, very low. Charizards usually have a very high population, even if the sets perform poorly, based on the fact of the matter that they are a Charizard. If we want to take a look at the overall sales price action history, not a ton of it. Taking a look at the most recent, you had very end of year breaking records, 60K, and then an absolute plummet where the price absolutely just got thrashed. Went down to 20K. That's about a 2/3 retrace. So the value in and of itself that this card lost was absolutely exponential. If I'm correct, the value of this card is very similar actually to the Shining card that we saw not that long ago of the Charizard. So I think the value that you can find in this card is really started to increase as it's really started to go down. Obviously, this is a Charizard, so it will have good return, good value over time as an investor / collector's item, and obviously, of course, with that it's going to be very expensive, but however, with that being said, the fact of the matter that you saw it go so high just for it to retrace 2/3 the way really should be indicative of the fact of the matter that as it stands right now in the current market, the demand did not match what is that $60,000 price point, especially considering if you look at the overall volume of the sales of the card, very much so low volume when it comes to sales in the past year, to be honest with you. I mean, if you really think about it, we had started 2020, we had 1 sale, then another 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 sales in 2020, 6 sales. I mean, yeah, you had like 7, you had barely any sales. You had less than 10 sales overall within the span of that year, and you haven't had one in 2021, if I'm correct. I took a look and tried seeing if I could find any recent sales history on eBay. Nothing that I could find that was very productive in kind of understanding the value of the card. And so it's definitely something that's very interesting to look at. Now, of course, the question is, do I think that it's worth the $20,000 that it's currently last sold at? And this was back in 2020. So who knows what the value of the card could actually be? It could be as low as $10,000. It could be $15,000. It could be $12,000. There's no there's no value that I can tell you that this is truly worth. Obviously, it's worth whatever someone's willing to buy it for, and the market deems that a valued item at that price. But as far as it goes, when taking a look at the card in and of itself, it's still something that's very interesting to take a look at. Now moving on to the next card that we're going to be taking a look at, and this is another very important card that we're going to see, and this is the Rayquaza Gold Star Holo. So this card is PSA 10. Population report is 47, which is extremely low. And this is once again following the theme of the fact that this generation was not that popular whatsoever. People really were in love with the Wizards of the Coast era, not to mention the fact of the matter, obviously you kind of had that initial hype with the overall series in and of itself for Pokemon, and then it kind of died out over time, and it didn't really get its rebirth again until, honestly, you could make an argument for kind of the 2016, Pokemon Go bubble, but you also could make arguments that it had a little bit of spark and life back into it during Black and White and the start of XY era. But without getting too much off on a tangent, we're going to take a look at the overall price value. So what's very interesting about this is, although the Charizard had a much higher of a record sale, the overall Rayquaza has been more consistent in overall beating the current price of the value between the two of them. Not to mention the fact of the matter, its overall all-time high was $45,000, and of course it dropped down to $34,000. With that being said, 45,000, 34,000. I mean, you're talking about around a 28% drop. And so what's interesting about this, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because obviously $10,000 you divide into 15, that's thirds. Sorry, $45,000 you divide that into 15, that becomes thirds. Obviously then if you take the 10, kind of go into fourths, a little bit over that. It's one of these things where taking a look at just the overall value of how much it's lost compared to its overall population, it once again goes to the argument that even though it has a very low population, even though it's scarce in and of itself, it is still going to be prone to pitfall when it comes to price action. However, with that being said, although this might sound kind of crazy, 28% is not a high, amount to have fallen, especially when we take a look at the majority of the market and how a lot of cards have fallen, as well as sealed product has fallen 50 to 90%. So this is where, once again, your kind of, long-term investment comes into play when it comes to securing liquidity if you were to want to kind of get rid of your assets at a minimal loss during times of downturn, because even though the overall demand has gone down, there's still such a limited supply. So the overall balancing when it comes to finding that market value tends to go down a lot slower and go up a lot higher because of, just the scarcity. And so that's why, it's important, but also at the same exact time, once again, you still see this as a risk during a downturn market because the value in and of itself goes down. Something once again to compare to the Charizard, double the population report. Charizard, very popular card, like the Rayquaza, saw a lot larger of an increase, and that is still very scarce. So it really just goes to show you once again that this all just comes down to demand of the market. Next thing we're going to take a look at is we're now going to start transitioning into looking at EX cards. And I think this is going to be where this, and more specifically the Delta species, are going to be the real money makers. And this is where we're going to really start talking about some of the overall investment opportunities. Of course, there are always investment opportunities in cards that you think are undervalued or that have retraced and you think they will hit their all-time highs again. So you could, of course, find value in gold stars. But for me, I like to take a look at items that I think are either undervalued or I think have an opportunity to basically really blow up because of their overall scarce population. I mean, that does tie into undervalued, but you get my point. One of those cards being the Salamence EX from Dragon Frontiers. So this card has a PSA population of 33 for 10 and a PSA 9 population of 80. The overall value of the card in and of itself, we're just not even going to take a look at this chart because that is how scarce the overall sales history is. PSA 10, same exact thing. There is such a scarce sales history. We want to take a look and see at some of the listed prices. $425 for a 9, $399 for a 9. And then also, if you want to as well, we can also take a look and see what the 10 is selling for. It's around $1,500. Now, of course, as always, as I've mentioned many times before, a lot of the times what it's being listed for is not the price it's actually going to be sold for, but nonetheless, it's still a really good gauge when it comes to taking a look at overall price value. Now, what I say in and of itself, Salamence is one of those ones that you could find real value in. Yeah, I think it is, but I think there are other EX ones that we're going to take a look at. But the reason why I wanted to kind of show you guys this one is just because I think it's very unique into its overall, low, population report, especially when taking a look at just the 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s combined. I mean, you're talking about less than 200 overall within these four, which is absolutely insane to see. Not to mention the fact of the matter, you've got PSA 9 cards that are supposedly, going for, $425. Who knows if they'll sell for that price point. But one thing I want to compare it to a little bit is looking at the Level X era, which is currently popping off quite a bit. The Level X era, you're seeing PSA 9 cards sell for around, the same price, depending upon this one, which one it is. And that really comes down to the demand as well as how scarce these Level X cards are. And so I think you can really see a mirroring, especially when you're looking at 9s and 10s. Regardless of whether or not it's the most popular one, of course, popularity is going to come with a lot more price fluctuation, and it's going to typically be at a higher price compared to the other ones. But in and of itself, I do still think that you can find real value in a lot of these EX cards, because there's such a low population, and long term those are the ones, once again, like we took a look at the Rayquaza, that are going to have the least amount of downturn and the most amount of upside. Not to mention the fact of the matter as well, which I think is even more important, is the overall sales history. We haven't had a sale of this card since 2017. So that should really go to show you how overall rare these cards in and of themselves are. There is such low price history when it comes to it. And so it's one of these things where it's even hard to say, okay, is it in a downtrend like the rest of the market? Because we can't really say, because we don't even know if it's in an uptrend, because there's so few of them that are being sold on the market, Like, what are we going to take a look and say, oh, look, it sold for $46 in a PSA 9. We can't really do that. And that's something you're going to see a lot of when it comes to this kind of EX era. Next one we're going to be taking a look at is we're actually going to now transition into taking a look at one of the other EX cards that I think is a really good investment opportunity, in my personal opinion. Not financial advice, not financial advisor. Reason I think so is because the fact of the matter, once again, very low population, 73 overall in existence. You can see this currently being sold at around, I think the lowest I saw was for 402. Of course, as always, doesn't mean it's going to be the sale for price, but nonetheless selling at, around $402 for an EX card that has such a low population report, I think is really good value. Not to mention the fact of the matter, you want to take at the overall price history. Once again, very low record sales over time, and it is on an uptrend. So we can speculatively say that this overall Salamence obviously is going to more likely still be in an uptrend. Obviously, you can compare to the Rayquaza and say, no, that's not necessarily true. And I think that's a valid argument to make. But when just comparing it to the overall EX cards, there seems to be a very much so trend that due to a lot of the scarcity of this card, it has, of course, seen some value over time. Once again, these cards were both sold back at the start of 2021 and the start back in 2020. So the overall, history within, the past year has literally been like nothing. It's been one full year almost. So you could make an argument that if something were to sell for, less than its last sold price of $325, then you could really see it go on a downtrend. And if you could get it for honestly around that price, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, but I would see that as a great, kind of pickup opportunity, because I do think there's some real value in taking a look at these EX cards. Of course, I want to be able to go through and look at every single one and say, this one in particular is a good one, this one's not a good one, but I only have so much time, especially considering how much I'm truly showing you guys and the amount of information in this video, because I'm trying to compare each and every one, as well as pick out specific ones that I think are informative to you guys, so you guys can see, okay, this one has a low population and is a good pickup, this one has a low population, it's not the best pickup, but it's still something to take a look at, etc., etc. Absol obviously not as popular as a card as the Salamence, so you could of course make the argument that it's at its value, but at the end of the day, one thing that I think stands true is a lot of people that are in this market like to collect master sets. Of course, they want to have all those EXs, not to mention the fact of the matter that you're talking about a card that still has a low population in an era that has really started to rise in overall popularity overall in this most recent boom. The last two things I'm gonna take a look at, and I'm gonna save my favorite one for last, but we're gonna take a look at one of the sealed booster boxes. So this is where it gets really fun. Talk about real value. Power Keeper, if I'm correct, this is its overall record high sale, $13,200, sold back in July 24th. Pretty good price for an EX box, right? It recently sold December 5th for $7,277. Of course, everyone loves to critique it, so we'll take a look and see, is this an item that is, of course, in good condition? I would make an argument that say, for a box of that era, yeah, it's in solid condition. Not to mention the fact of the matter, yes, it was sold by a valid person, or a valid eBay account. With that being said, the value has almost dropped 50%, which for a box in this era, once again, you would really think, considering the value of these cards and the scarcity of these cards, this should be worth more. Well, apparently the market does not deem so. And so in my personal opinion, not financial advice, not a financial advisor, I think there's a lot of real value when it comes to the overall sealed product in this era. And I'm not saying that you should do this, but when it specifically comes to the overall fact of the matter that there is such a low population, like I said, doesn't mean you should do this. But if you were to open the box, there's a lot of cards that you could grade that are in very low population. You could probably find real value if, of course, they were hit 9s and 10s. Hypothetical, not suggesting you do that. Obviously, it's financially speaking more wise for you to keep the box sealed than to try and open up. But it's still something to think about. Not to mention the fact of the matter that for a box in this era, I think it's definitely something that I myself will be picking up relatively soon in the near future of next year, considering the fact that I do think there will be more downside in the overall future because of the demand decreasing, but more importantly, the opportunity specifically to be made in this era for such scarce product. I think it's really started to correct into very nice pricing. Now, of course, you could make an argument saying, well, Eli, $7,000 is pretty expensive because you can get a Jungle Booster Box First Edition for around a similar price of that. Well, here's the fact of the matter. There is a lot more First Edition Jungle Booster Box that was printed and kept sealed because of the demand at the time for the First Edition. A lot of people don't really realize that compared to this overall EX era. So I think when you're overall, scaling it, I think it's a value, not to mention considering the fact of how much it's truly retraced. That's, I think, even more important, because then that's indicative of how high the value in and of itself could potentially go in an overall uptrend. So something very important to consider. But the last thing we're going to take a look at, we're actually burning through quite well, under 20 minutes. The last thing we're going to take a look at, and this is going to be probably one of my favorite things to kind of talk about in this overall market. Sorry if I sound super congested. I'm not exactly in the best shape right now, so please forgive me. It's hard to breathe. As far as it goes, we're going to be taking a look at the overall Delta species cards. So for those people that don't know, during the EX era, they came out with these cards that were called Delta species. Some of my favorite cards. I would love to collect these long term. Delta Species cards were basically just the concept in which you had a specific card that had a different typing. It was basically regional variants before regional variants became a thing in the overall games, and were just more or less just a special concept that they had for the cards. Perfect one we're going to take a look at is this overall Snorlax PSA 10 Gem Mint. Going for around 500 bucks. Once again, doesn't mean it's going to sell for that price. Has the best offer. Price action history, we can take a look at it. 42 is the overall population, 98 in PSA 9. Last sale history was back in the start of February, of course. Sold for 444. You can make an argument as demand's gone down, you could definitely try and snipe this for less than 400 bucks. So with that being said, of course, you can decide for yourself whether that's worth it. But in my personal opinion, I think that this is kind of one of those niche eras that has something kind of special to it when it comes to these the collectability of these cards. I think it's going to be one of those cards, not just specifically the Snorlax, but just, you know, the Delta Species ones in general, that are going to be very much so popular long term, especially considering how low print they are. I think that you know, ones that are going to be the more popular ones, of course, are going to do the best over time. You know, the Delta Species Blastoise and the Charizard, and of course, a lot of the first gen ones. But with that being said, I do think these are kind of cards that are really worth the pickup long term, because I do think that the value with them there's a lot of potential. Of course, if you want to get a 9, 175, or best offer, once again, always want to try and throw up yourself a best offer. I think that's very important. You know, we can see some other ones being listed for the, you know, Dragonite, Heracross, and PSA 9 conditions. So there's quite a bit of them that you can actually take a look at and see some real opportunities, in my personal opinion. And you might say to yourself, for a card that's not an EX, for a card that's not a Gold Star, you're like, wow, you know, picking it up for 500 bucks, or if you're, you know, able to get it for less than 400 bucks, wow, that seems, you know, really expensive, you know. And you might think that, but then when you see the fact of the matter, there's only 42 of these in population, and as really you start to see demand kind of turn back around over time, especially in this overall next run, because like I've mentioned before with you guys, obviously, you know, I do think there's a lot of downturn to come in the next year. This market comes in cycles, and you best be believing when we get into our next cycle, everything's going to go higher than it did the last time around. And that's my personal opinion. If you are someone who believes in Pokemon, then you should also agree with me on that as well, because that's how demand cycles go. They have a high, and then over time, more people come back into the market once the hype starts to pick back up again. So with that being said, I think that you could really find some opportunity. And here's the deal, man. Even if this is something that you're saying to yourself, you know, none of these items I think is worth it because these are out of my price point. This is kind of, you know, not in my overall caliber of investing, or I think it's still a really cool kind of piece to collect, especially if you are someone that likes to collect certain Pokemon from, you know, Generation 1, Generation 2, Generation 3. There are a lot of cards within this era that are really, really cool to collect, and I myself will be picking up a lot of, because I do think that they have, you know, some really long-term value, and I do think some of them are undervalued and have a lot of potential, considering the fact of the matter that the sales history is so scarce. Not to mention the fact of the matter, and I could be completely wrong about this, but there are going to be, with the demand continuing to decrease, even more opportunity in this specific era, because considering the fact of the matter that hasn't been a sale for the longest time for a lot of these cards, there's going to be buyers that are going to be desperate for liquidity, and they're going to want to try and give it up. And so if you just throw out offers, it never hurts. There's been times where I've thrown out offers never expecting them to bite, and they'll counter offer me like literally a couple bucks above what I was, you know, offering, or they'll accept my offer, never expecting it to happen. But, you know, in downturn times, people need liquidity. People need to get rid of cards because they're opening up to other aspects of their collection. Just whatever it is, there's always going to be opportunity. And so finding cards that have these really low populations, specifically, once again, this era has really got a low population report on these cards. I think there is a ton of opportunity in this market. But as far as it goes for today's video, that is the overall main topic. I don't think there's really much I need to take a wrap up on. Obviously, I'm going to be throwing in the chapters so you can go and look and see which specific cards because I feel like I made everything very clear and concise. It's not really much to really wrap up. I could, of course, say, main points. This area is very low. This area's got very low population, a lot of opportunity in the market, as well as the fact of the matter that there is a lot of different aspects when it comes to this market and its uniqueness when it comes to investing as well as collecting. That can be the main 3 takeaways. Do with it as you will. But yeah. So as always, friendly reminder before we end the video, we are doing weekly giveaways. All you have to do to enter is leave a like, comment down below, and be subscribed to the channel. You can comment and like on any of the 3 videos we post each and every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Allows you for up to 3 entries if you just leave a like and comment on each one of those videos. And then we also have up to 3 winners as well each and every week. 6 Fusion Strike booster packs for each and every winner. So not a ton of people leave comments in the grant. I mean, I shouldn't say not a lot of people. A lot of you guys actually leave comments, and I thank you guys for that. I should say we're a smaller channel, so your odds are already high as it is, especially if you do leave a comment on each and every video. But as far as it goes, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Until then, I will see you guys on Friday. Peace.